You're stuck at home in quarantine. 5 o'clock. Why not have a drink with me?
Happy Cinco de Mayo. Good afternoon. Hope everybody is doing well. Happy Cinco de Mayo back to you, Dad. Excited to be celebrating today by making a tequila version of a classic cocktail, the Margarita. And in celebrating Cinco de Mayo, a lot of people think Cinco de Mayo is like Mexican Independence Day. In fact, it is not. It is nothing of the sort. That is on September 16th. Cinco de Mayo is actually like not a big deal in Mexico, much like St. Patrick's Day is NBD in Ireland. And it has become more of a like Mexican-American cultural celebration in the US. But it celebrates the Battle of Puebla, which was a battle between the Mexicans and the French in 1862. So as we were fighting our Civil War in America, Mexico was having some trouble paying some debts, and Great Britain and Spain did a reasonable thing and sort of renegotiating the debt, and we're all fine. But Emperor Napoleon III of France decided he didn't want to do that, and he wanted to sort of exploit the opportunity in order to do a land grab in Mexico and basically conquer a big part of Mexico. Many think because he was resentful that his uncle gave away so much land to Thomas Jefferson with the Louisiana Purchase. So anyway, the other incentive for the French actually is that they were supporting or trying to support the Confederates during the Civil War, and so this was also a play at sort of supporting them up from the south. So the French are on their way to Mexico in order to basically take over Veracruz is their plan. And so they're sending basically 5,000 French troops over there to overtake it. But the Mexicans are ready for them in Puebla, which is this city in east central Mexico. And so the Mexicans sort of gather up whoever they can. They say, we have to reinforce Puebla, we have to go. There are a ton of actually indigenous Mexicans that are coming and supporting the cause. And so the 5,000 French soldiers are coming, and then they have 2,000 Mexicans in Puebla, and they're able to hold them off. There were 1,000 French casualties in the battle, only 500 Mexican casualties, despite being outnumbered 5-2. And they ended up stopping the French right there. The French didn't make it to Veracruz, at least not in that trip. And so this became a big deal of sort of the Mexicans standing up for themselves and standing up against European powers. And it's still celebrated in a bigger deal in Puebla, but it's definitely not a huge Mexican, it's not a federal holiday there. I think schools might be closed, at least in some parts of it, but we celebrate it more as a commercial entity like everything else here in the United States. And actually in the 1950s and 60s, it was really pushed by some Mexican-American activists as a way to really celebrate the Mexican culture in the United States. And so for that it's good, but it's also become very commercialized. In any case, happy Cinco de Mayo. And we're going to be celebrating Cinco de Mayo with the classic Mexican cocktail, what has turned into probably the most ordered drink in bars across the United States, the great, fantastic drink, the Margarita. And when you go back to the cocktails of the 18th century, they were always playing around with these different elements of, you've got your spirit, you've got some sweetener, you've got bitters, you've got ice or water. That's sort of your classic cocktail. Then they start experimenting with some like fruit juices. So what if I use some lemon juice? What if I use some lime juice? What if I use some orange juice? And so there's all these different iterations of the cocktail, right? So they go from basically the basic cocktail and they start making whiskey sours, which is going to have your whiskey, your simple syrup, but now your lemon juice in it. And they evolved from there And there's like a slight branching, and there's two different sort of variations of what was called a daisy. One of them was like, oh, let's pep this up with some soda water and make it sort of a long fizzy drink. And the other one was, no, like actually I think a daisy should be, instead of adding soda water, let's add some other exotic sweetener, like grenadine or raspberry syrup, or something like that, and we'll call that a daisy. But it can be any spirit, basically, with, and that's what ended up being like your standard daisy in the early 1900s. You've got a spirit, you've got citrus, and then you've got some sort of interesting sweetener. Might be a liqueur, might be raspberry syrup, or something like that. And whiskey daisies were probably the most popular one. Then we get into Prohibition, when we're no longer drinking in the United States. At least we're not drinking good drinks, because it's illegal. But where Prohibition ended was at our borders. And so if you go just south of our border, there's this club near Tijuana, that was using one of the main spirits that they had in Mexico, which was tequila. And they first made a drink called a sunrise tequila, which we've turned into the tequila sunrise, which has your orange juice, has some grenadine, and that took off eventually as a popular cocktail. And then they made this other drink, which they were calling tequila daisies, which was, again, using their spirit of tequila. They were sweetening it with either sugar or maybe some agave, which is what we'll be using today, and then they were adding triple sec to it. And everybody was loving these tequila daisies. Let's all drink the tequila daisies. It became a really big deal down in Tijuana. And as they were ordering it down there, they started using the Spanish word for daisy, which is Margarita. And so that is how we get this cocktail, this tequila version of a daisy, which we call the Margarita. And tequila we can talk about tequila another time, but tequila definitely took a while to take hold in the U.S. throughout the 1900s, and I would say it was lagging a few decades behind vodka, which we talked about yesterday. But we have the Margarita now, and I'm excited to make it because it's an amazing and delicious drink. And we're going to be making two different versions of the Margarita. We're going to make what's sort of my just like standard recipe, which I really like. And then we're also going to be making a really popular Margarita sort of alternate recipe that is just really popular in cocktail circles, called Tommy's Margarita, which was created at Tommy's Mexican Restaurant, which is this restaurant in San Francisco that created, it's a version of the Margarita, but instead of using the triple sec or Cointreau, it basically subs that out and just ups the agave sweetener a little bit, in order to really let a slightly better tequila come through. So it's an interesting variation, but I think it's good. So we are going to be juicing some limes for our margaritas today. And one of these I'm going to keep some lime wheels for garnish. So I'm just going to set those aside. But the rest of them I'll juice. I need to grab my hand juicer real quick. This. I'm totally jealous. Ben, who I think is in the chat, sent me this picture. He just got this amazing standing juicer that's probably this tall. And it has just this huge lever, and it's this beautiful bright orange color. It looks so cool. You'll have to send me a video of it in action, Ben. Would love to see it. But I'm doing just fine with my hand juicer here. I do have, if I have a ton of juicing to do for like a party, we do have this sort of old school Juice King, which some friends of ours picked up for us at a garage sale. This thing's probably from like the 1970s, but it does the trick, man, and it really just pulverizes those citrus fruits. Who else has joined? We've got Keith in the chat. Hey Keith, Helen, Peggy, how you doing, Mom? Good to see everybody. I know it's backwards, but we hung up our Fiesta sign this evening, so we're ready to go for Cinco de Mayo. And this really is one of my favorite cocktails. This is a cocktail that I'll come back to again and again throughout the summer months. It's just really good, especially when you get that balance just right of the sweetness. You get a good tequila to come through in it. And, oh wow, I love it. This is getting a little noisy, a little squeaky. All right, I'll do this last one. Why not? Another pretty nice day here, sunny out, a little bit cooler than yesterday or the day before, but still very nice. So no complaints there. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make just basically two of my standard classic margarita recipes that I love very, very much. And so I'm gonna double batch it. Now Helen does not like salt on her rim, but I do. So I'm gonna salt one of these rims first. And the way I'm gonna do that is I'm gonna take some lime, and on the outside, I'm just gonna rub some lime juice around half of it, I like to do. And then I'm just going to roll that in some nice kosher salt. So that is ready to go. And again, I like to just do it with half of it so I can kind of manage how much saltiness I want on each sip. So you've got that nice half there. Very beautiful. So let's make this. So we're gonna do 2 ounces of tequila in each of these drinks. So for this first one, I'm just gonna use my Jose Cuervo tequila. This is a standard, nothing special tequila, but we are almost done with it. So that's good. And I've been encouraging me to pare down my bottles in my bar. All right, so we've got 2 ounces of tequila per drink. Next, we're gonna do 3/4 of an ounce of Cointreau. Remember, Cointreau is just triple sec. It's just like the best triple sec. And I think any cocktail is as good as its weakest ingredient. So if you want a good margarita, you need to use a good triple sec. So here we go. If you use Grand Marnier instead of Cointreau, it's apparently called a Cadillac margarita. That's your thing. Next, we're going to use so we use 3/4 of an ounce of the Cointreau, now 3/4 of an ounce per drink of the lime juice, so equal parts of that. And we're going to sweeten this with agave syrup. And so what I did to make the agave syrup is I basically just took some agave nectar and I loosened it up and diluted it 1-to-1 with some warm water to make this nice agave syrup. So it's going to be nice and sweet. We use the agave to complement the agave flavors in the tequila. And I'm going to use just 1/4 of an ounce of the agave syrup per drink. Like that. Beautiful. So now I'm going to grab my ice and we're going to do some shaking. Oh my god, I don't have a glass for my shaker tin. What is going on? Rookie mistake right there. Seal this up, and let's party as we shake. Now, as I almost always do, I'm going to do a double strain into my coupe glasses. I think if you're at a bar and you order a margarita, the things you'll need to specify are on the rocks or up. And then, do you want it with the salt rim or not? Some people like a sugar rim. I don't really understand those people, but they exist and I respect that. Strain this evenly between the two glasses. Now, if you are not exacting with your ratios and you don't know exactly how sweet or sour somebody wants their drink, you could serve this with like a lime wedge on the side, and then they can, if they need some more, squeeze a little bit lime inside. I'm confident in my proportions, and so I like to have my garnish to be less functional than that, and really, instead of having it be something you squeeze in, just have a nice lime wheel that looks pretty and will help with the aromas up top, like so. And there you have the margarita. Give this a taste. Helen, if you're still in the chat, feel free to come down anytime to claim yours. And I'll grab mine. Nice and limey. Love a good margarita. So good. All right. Some salt on this one. Happy Cinco de Mayo. Now, I promised 2 margarita recipes. And so let's transition now to number 2, which I've always been curious to sort of do a side-by-side. And so this, as I said, is called Tommy's Margarita, which people in the know will know, like, oh, I know what Tommy's Margarita is. It's a very famous margarita variation cocktail recipe. And so for this one, again, we're going to up the agave a little bit, and we're going to nix the Cointreau altogether, no triple sec. And what this do is this allows the tequila to really speak to you a little bit more. So I'm going to use a slightly nicer tequila. I've got this Reposado tequila. Remember, Reposado is aged anywhere from, I believe it's 60 days to 365 days, might be 30. I forget if the minimum cutoff is 1 month or 2, but it's anything up until a year after that. So I'm going to use 2 ounces of my tequila. And then I'm going to take 1 ounce of lime juice. And 1 ounce of agave syrup. So again, we had to really up the agave syrup because we don't have the Cointreau doing the work for the sweetener. The other interesting thing about the Tommy's Margarita is it's traditionally unstrained. You just pour it right into a rocks glass You don't garnish it, bam, you're done, you're good to go. So I don't need this strainer anymore. Just gonna dump this old ice. Party's over, Fiesta sign is down. Add some new ice for shaking. Like that. And let's give it a whirl. I'm nervous about is whether all this ice will fit in this rocks glass, but I think it will. I have a nice big sort of double rocks glass here. Again, I'm going to pour right into this. Oh, perfect. No garnish. And there we have the Tommy Margarita. Cheers again. Happy Cinco de Mayo. Oh, that's very good. So you definitely got a little bit more of the tequila coming through, which is why it's important to use a nicer tequila here. This is going to really highlight the tequila more than your traditional margarita, which gets hidden a little bit by the Cointreau and by the lime. This feels, even though it's not less lime juice, it feels a little bit less limey, I think because the tequila is coming through a little bit more. But the sweetness, the agave nectar, upping the agave syrup really balances the sweetness of this nicely. Feels less dainty as a drink. Got the ice chips, it's got the ice in it, swirling around, just feels a little bit more. It's actually an interesting contrast because this you have this sort of beautiful coupe glass, double strained, but you're not appreciating the tequila as much. Whereas here you have this more rough and tumble, on the rocks, sort of ice chips, almost like a slushy feeling to it, but the tequila comes through quite nicely. All right. I might be a convert on the Tommy's Margarita. This is really nice, especially if you're trying to highlight a slightly nicer tequila, that is the way to go. All right, well, happy Cinco de Mayo, everybody. And that'll wrap up the margarita portion of this evening, although we do have one more cocktail-related task, bonus content for you all if you want to stick around, which is I am going to finish up the batch of dry vermouth that I started making yesterday. So let me just get this ice back in the freezer, and then we will finish our process. Now this is going to be a lot easier than when I make sweet vermouth. When I make sweet vermouth, we start out basically the same way. But then 24 hours later, I need to caramelize some sugar. I make some hibiscus tea. I'm mixing all these things up. I'm cooking on the stove and also adding the wine to it. Here, we really just need to sweeten it up a little bit, strain out the botanicals, and we're good to go. So in this jar, this is what we started yesterday, where we had 6 ounces of vodka and then all of our herbs and barks and spices and the orange peel that we have in there. And so the first thing I need to do is just strain this out, extracting as much of the liquid as I can. So I have this one strainer, and then I also have some cheesecloth that I'm going to cut. Let me just grab my scissors. Everything's fine over there. Alright. Cut my cheesecloth up. Lovely. So I use like a really unroll it, and then I want it to go like have 3 layers that it's going to go through. So I just try to evenly do that. Rest it in my sieve like so. And then I'm going to take this nice concoction, pop it open. Oh boy! It's very strong. We're going to dilute this a lot with wine in a moment, but this is where all the flavors are going to come from for our vermouth. So let's just strain this through. See if we can get some. Strain this through there. Get everything in there. And then I'm just gonna like wrap this up and squeeze it as much as I can to get as much of the liquid out as possible. Lovely. So now what we have is this sort of just like brownish liquid there. And all we need to do is sweeten it up a little bit with some simple syrup and then add our wine, which is the basis for our vermouth. So let's move this Margarita out of the way. I have this nice new clean jar. Gonna pour this right into it. Beautiful. I'm gonna sweeten it with 1.5 ounces of simple syrup. This is just our normal 1-to-1 simple syrup. And then we're going to add our wine. So we need to add 20 ounces of a dry white wine. I always use just a Pinot Grigio. You don't want anything that's going to bring a ton of flavors because we want to control all of those flavors from all of the herbs and botanicals that we used. So I just have like a cheap, this is like an $8 or $9 bottle of Pinot Grigio. And I'm going to measure out 20 ounces of it. And this measuring cup goes up to 16, so we're gonna go up to 10 ounces twice. Look at that math. I used to be a math teacher. Check that out. All right, so that's 10. And another 10. Stick this in the fridge. A little bit left there. Could have done the trick where you like measure out how much will be left and then just pour the bottle in, but we're doing just fine. Have a sip of Margarita. Pour in the rest of our wine. And that's it. Just give this a good shake to mix everything up. And we're done. This is good to go. I could use this right now. I'm excited to try this. And Helen and I really got into drinking vermouth when we were in Spain last year. In Barcelona, all the different pubs and bars all just had their own house vermouths that they were making, and you'd see these big jars behind the bar where they're infusing all these different botanicals and stuff. And you can get your white vermouth or your red vermouth, and it was just great. They served it with a couple olives with a big wedge of orange in it, and you just drank it straight, and it's great. And we do that with our sweet vermouth here. Excited to try our dry vermouth the same way. But then you should also expect some dry vermouth-centric cocktails coming up. towards the end of the week. We do, of course, have Quarantiki Wednesday tomorrow. It got bumped by the wonderful and celebratory Cinco de Mayo today, but excited to make a tiki cocktail tomorrow. And then we'll get some dry vermouth drinks going starting on Thursday. Otherwise, hope you all are doing well. Hope you had a good Tuesday. Hope you enjoy your Tuesday evening. Hope you're enjoying the evening with something that makes you happy, whether it's a margarita or something else. And
It's 5 o'clock. Why not have a drink with me?
cheers, everyone. Have a great night.